Volume 1, Chapter 5. I got off at my stop and stood at the entrance to the mountains. After checking to see that there was no one around, I opened the skill book to see what was inside. The skill name was Effort. Weird. So weird. I couldn't tell what kind of skill this was just by the name. I thought maybe I should just try learning it, but then again I realized I shouldn't waste my one skill slot with a level 0 skill book. There was another reason why I couldn't learn this. I wanted to become a hunter. I even planned which skill book I would buy. Bursting Light, a level 1 active skill. If you just had this skill, you could pierce through a monster's hide without the aid of hunter equipment. I had plenty of dungeon experience and I had saved up to about 8,000. If I could sell this skill book, I would be able to get to my goal that much faster. Thinking about this as I was walking, it wasn't too long before I reached the dungeon. The dungeons in Anson are known to be the lowest level 1 dungeons. Though it had recently become the butt of jokes among hunters for being an easy dungeon with the advent of so many high-level hunters, there was once a time when this dungeon was considered highly dangerous. And it was. I came too quickly. I looked around for the first-time hunter that my broker had told me about. I was about to call but decided it would be better to just wait until the promised time. There were actually quite a few people aside from myself. They all looked pretty well dressed too. Their armor shined brightly and their blades looked sharp. Could it be them? At the base of a small hill, I could see a group of people dressed similarly standing around. 4 teenage boys, 1 middle-aged man, and 1 girl in her mid-20s holding a huge backpack. 6 in total. I was puzzled. It was standard for there to only be 5 people in a group embarking into a dungeon. This was because the admission price started at 5 people. Are you the person that Mr. Song had recommended as a porter? The middle-aged man asked me as I walked towards them. He was clothed in a robe that covered his entire body from neck to ankle, but it didn't cover up his bald head and round stomach. It was safe to assume that he was the leader of the party. Mr. Young. Doesn't this young man look much too young? I cannot trust him. The one with red dyed hair and piercing on his lip as well as both ears asked as he glanced me up and down. I didn't know that a rich family's kid did things like that, but I guess I'm not always right. I am a level 2 porter, John Sang-min. And your name is? You don't need to know. Just do your job. You know that if we catch you stealing any items, we're going to cut off your hands, right? My experience is 6 years. You don't have anything to worry about. I tried to respond as professionally as possible. You meet all sorts of people doing this for 6 years. I was good at hiding my derision. He walked to the girl carrying the heavy backpack. Sua, why don't you hand that backpack over to that kid? Oh no? But I need this so I can. If I ask something of you, you must do as I say, okay? In a slimy tone. Yes, sir. The girl looked at me apologetically and handed it over. It seemed there was a good amount of equipment loaded in this backpack from the weight of it. I could tell that it was about 20 kilograms. Seeing that she could carry this all the way up here without breaking a sweat, she was probably a porter as well. There was no reason for me to ask why they needed 2 porters in one party. From the way he talked to the girl porter, the answer was so obvious. He wanted her with him to lighten his mood. This isn't the first time I've seen something like this happen. Ugh, watch the face. I can't let him see my disgust. Careful. Will it be all 7 of you? The person stationed in front of the dungeon's entrance collecting the admissions asked. Dungeons were managed by the country, so the person collecting the entrance fee was most certainly a government official. It wasn't really a high-up position. It was more of an entry-level position that the newbies took turns doing. The starting salary of a civil servant was about $40K. This was about double a normal person's salary. Most private businesses went bankrupt, so government jobs became the best ones somehow. So these kids collecting admissions at the entrance would be considered the elite of the elites of South Korea. 2 are porters. Including myself, there are 5 hunters. Mr. Young shoved to the front and held out a card. It was probably a corporate card. Level 1 dungeon admissions started at $3,000 for a party of 5. Though less expensive compared to the $5,000 admission fee for level 2 dungeons, it was still not cheap. We usually only allow 1 porter. If you would like to take both into the dungeon, there will be an additional fee. Geesh. Such a stiff rule. How much is it? $300. Just put it all on this card. It looks like we're about to spend $600 just on hiring a porter. Mr. Young glanced at me. Why is he looking at me? I'm the one who's really going to be working. If he wants to get mad at someone, it should be the punk who brought the girl. The high walls had barbed wire curled at the top, and when you walked in, the very first thing you could see was an emergency ward. This was probably so that any accidents that happened within the dungeon could be attended to right away at the location. The doctors at this dungeon had healing skills at the very minimum. This was because stab wounds and other injuries happened quite often within a dungeon where this was necessary. Do you mind if we rest a bit here before heading in? The boy carrying a golden bow asked with an anxious expression. When the red-haired boy nodded his head, the middle-aged man responded. Yes, sir. You have done well walking so far up until this point. We shall rest. We have plenty of time, so there should be no problem in resting for at least 30 minutes. Everyone went into a cafe except for me. It just seemed that I was naturally excluded from going into such a nice atmosphere, so I stayed back. While waiting outside the cafe, I observed the boy with the golden arrow. From the way everyone was speaking to him, it was obvious that the wealthy son was this kid. What was most dangerous in clearing a dungeon was not the red-haired and cheeky boy, nor was it the extremely slow-moving Mr. Young. It was a beginner like the bow boy. No matter how much you treat a dungeon as if it were a playground, there is no quelling the fear of your first time. Especially with a boy who looks like he couldn't even kill a fly, he had an extremely high chance of turning tail and running as soon as he encountered a monster. If you have an expert and just follow his directions, it was easy to clear a level 1 dungeon without an incident, but boys like this had a hard time keeping their composure. Wherein lied the issue? This is where big incidents can happen. Well, I guess that was the whole reason why the broker had given me this job. It wouldn't make sense that the job would be easy if it paid $200 in one shot. It's a good thing I have the skill to back it up. HM. But isn't that Athena's bow? I fixed my eyes on the boy's weapon. One of my many talents includes examining and remembering all the items that pop up in the hunter market. Though everything there was so damn expensive that I couldn't even dream of buying it, I had put some items in my basket a few times before putting it back. Don't act like you've never done that before in your life. Honestly, just doing that made me feel like those items in my basket were truly mine, even if only for that moment. Happiness isn't too far away if you know just where to look. Anyway, one of those items I had put into my basket one time or another was that golden bow. It seemed I had really taken a liking to it, since I still remember the exact name of it even now. It was something you could use even without experience, and since it was a level 4 weapon, killing a level 1 monster with it was a foregone conclusion. The best thing about it was that the arrow could only hurt a monster and never a human. If any weapon had this characteristic, the price of it automatically doubled. If you have a weapon of that caliber, anyone holding it could call themselves a hunter and get away with it. And then there was that little fact about the golden color of it being so damn cool. Sangmin. Tap. Someone called out my name as they tapped me on the shoulder. Volume 1 Chapter 6. One John Tak? Oh. I thought you would have forgotten my name. How could I? To be honest, we weren't really all that close. Well, that wasn't the reason why I didn't forget your name. Just as he said, we weren't really close enough to call each other friends. We probably said hi to each other a handful of times in school, and later when we met at a dungeon entrance by chance we exchanged a brief hello. We even had alcohol together once. But that was the first time and the last time about 2 years ago. Anyway, it seems like we're meeting after almost 2 years now. Did you graduate? I just left in the middle without really finishing. Why? The tuition seemed like a waste. I was going to be a porter anyway, so I felt like there wasn't really a point in me graduating. So I just told a white lie to my parents, a little white lie, and kept the tuition money. I bought some equipment with that, and here I am. As one John Tak spoke, he spread out his arms and legs to show me the protective gear that was covering him. It wasn't quite hunter quality, so it wasn't something that would really impress anyone, but the difference between having it and not having it was still huge. I have some protective gear myself. Due to the heavy gear I always had to carry, I found myself reducing any protective gear to the bare minimum: waist protector, head and neck protecting headgear, mail made from synthetic resin, and arm protectors. I also had a pair of fire-resistant gloves. My gear may look humble, but all of it cost me nearly $10,000. I know. Ridiculous. Hey. It has been a while though, so we should at least exchange numbers or something, don't you think? I wanted to stop the small talk and leave, but this bastard grabbed my arm. I reluctantly gave him my business card. What is this? Pretty boy porter John Sangmin? Coo. I guess nothing's really changed, huh? Is anything different with you? I grabbed and looked at the business card he handed over my way. It had a black background with Ultimate Porter written in bold white Gothic print. Doesn't it leave quite an impression? Anyway, you're on their team, right? This guy. He put his stupid arm over my shoulder and pointed at Mr. Young and Red Hair. When I turned my head a bit, I saw Mr. Red Hair secretly stroking the girl porter's leg. How is it that he can act exactly like you would expect him to act? Slimeball. Yeah, I guess. I know that guy. You'll have your hands full. Who? Red Hair? Yeah. He's the youngest son of a rich construction company owner. He has a bit of an anger management issue. So prepare yourself to get hit a few times. That kind of stuff is a given in this line of work. I got this. I was about to tell him that I had just left another guy with anger management issues and almost had my head crushed in the process, but why bother? That's not it though. This is all rumors, but I heard that he even raped some porter girl in a dungeon. What the hell? What kind of a man can do something like that in a dungeon? I call bull. Hey. I'm serious here. You don't get why you got picked to do this job? Why did I get picked? Tell me. Because that piece of trash is always going around and doing that crap, so they require another guy porter. Yeah, right. It's not as if I'm the only guy porter who will take the job. And if he was bold enough to do something like that, would he even care what another porter thinks? Who do you think those guys are? Well, don't say I didn't want you. You be careful. If you make one wrong move. Oh yeah. Should we go get a cup of coffee too? You buy. As if. Come on. I gave you some good tips. You know, right? that I wouldn't give any old person something juicy like this. It didn't even seem like good intel, and why should I buy you something just because you wanted to gossip a bit? Hey, loosen up. I've had enough of you, especially since what you pulled the last time 2 years ago, so just drop it, okay? 2 years ago. What are you talking about? Don't say you don't remember. I don't remember. What happened 2 years ago? Damn. I hate to say it with my own mouth, but last time 2 years ago when we shared a drink, you ran away without paying the bill. You don't remember? Nah. I don't. I do things like that quite often, he. Geez, you still go around pulling crap like that? One John Tack turned bright red in the face and stared daggers into me at this point. What do you want then? You want to smack me a good one? Ah shit. John Tack took a deep breath and said, Sorry. If you know you're sorry, just don't do it again. To be honest, I haven't really been doing so hot lately. What do you mean lately? I'm sure it was since 2 years ago. Ah, come on. For someone who dropped out of school to be a full-time porter, are you crying about being poor now? And didn't you just come out from clearing a dungeon? I'm pretty sure you have money in your pockets right now. I'd gotten paid in advance and it went to all the collection agencies. And I didn't get any tip. Collections? Where did you borrow money from? Not long ago I got hurt pretty badly, so I had to borrow money for the emergency ward. You've got to be shitting me. That's the worst. Porters, compared to other regular jobs, are paid on the pretty decent side. If she clears a dungeon once, they can earn from $100 to $1,000, and if they're pretty popular they can do this work all day, every day. Depending on how good you are, you have the potential to make $10,000 a month. But because it was so physically demanding, if you get hurt even once, the hospital fees are ridiculous. And, adding insult to injury, you're hurt so you can't even earn any income. Because it isn't a steady job in the first place, getting a loan from the bank is not an option and you have to resort to a loan shark. It's all pretty shitty. You think I don't know that? You should have told your parents. If they find out that I got hurt while being a porter, they'll probably make me quit right away. True. I couldn't help but relate to him on that point. Because I pretty much lied to my parents that I was employed full-time while instead I have been portering the whole time. I guess I pretty much lied to myself, saying it would be fine once I became a famous hunter, and I gave them a lot of money to compensate. I pretended to fall for whatever garbage he was spewing and bought him a cup of coffee before getting up. I figured there was no point in butting heads with someone who was in the same occupation and similar situation as me. I could definitely get the feeling that he played me as I watched him shaking my hand gleefully and trotting off down the hill, but, well, I shouldn't be too stingy over a stupid cup of coffee. If you look at a dungeon from the outside, it looks like an elliptical black hole. Where a dungeon appears can really vary, but they were most common in a mountain or forest. No one knows why. Well, no one even knows why the monsters appeared, so of course no one would know why the dungeons appeared either. Duh. Honestly, 50 years had come to pass since they first appeared, so there isn't really anyone who is curious as to the reason why anymore. To all of us, it's now just a normal thing. Dungeons vary in all sorts of ways. If I were to try and explain every single kind of dungeon, a whole book wouldn't be enough. But below are the most important points. 1. You can go into a dungeon and come out of it of your own free will. 2. The dungeon automatically resets after it is completed. 3. The monsters appearing in a dungeon are random. The only rule is that the monsters appear according to the dungeon's level. For the moment you die in a dungeon, all your items disappear. Ha, scary. Looking at the black hole ahead of me, I swallowed a small lump. It's not my first rodeo, but I can't help the little butterflies I get every single time. I could see Red Hair didn't like that I showed some anxiety, but a hunter and porter's position are just so different. To give you a general idea, barring that the hunters didn't come here for the sole purpose of suicide, there is almost no chance of them dying. Case in point, those clothes they're all wearing, it may look super light and flimsy, but they can withstand even a sniper rifle at close range. And the robe Mr. Jung is wearing? If he just rolls himself into a little protective ball, there's nothing that can hurt him. Well, let us all go in now. Mr. Jung spoke. The inside of the dungeon was pretty bright, and it was big enough where 5 people could stretch out and hold hands and still have room. At 10 meters, the dungeon was also pretty high, so there wouldn't be any problem of space. Let us proceed slowly. If a monster is to appear, please do not make any preemptive attacks. It is best to follow my instructions. And so they began. Volume 1, Chapter 7. What are you being so uptight for just a level 1 dungeon? Let's just go in there and just do it in one shot. Come on! Red Hair, Song Han Sol, opened his mouth and made this unnecessarily stupid comment. There is a hunter who is here for the first time, so we should try and be considerate of his pace. Young Chul will be in the back just shooting his bow and arrow, so it doesn't really matter now, does it? One can never be too cautious. But one can be too reckless. I guess if Mr. Jung says so. If scaredy cats like you come into the dungeon, what fun is it for any of us? Ha ha. This is all for the safety of our young master. The torchlights were flickering against the dark cave walls. The ants in dungeons were known for its humanoid monsters. And among those that most frequently appeared were the goblins and kobolds. Both of these monsters stood at about only 1 meter and 50 centimeters tall, but they are not to be underestimated. That was because the density of a monster's muscle fibers were several times stronger than that of a human. Squeeze. Mr. Jung, who was leading the party at the very front, raised his hand and formed a fist. This meant there was a monster. I moved my head a bit to get a better look and spotted them. There were 3 goblins sitting on the floor tearing into some meat in front of a smoking fire. First, I'll cast a distraction spell. I will point to the monster for the initial attack with a laser pointer, then young Master Han Sol will distract it while the other 2 hunters can take care of it at that point. Mr. Jung was a support hunter, so he was the obvious choice in leading the raid. What happens if I kill them all? Song Han Sol asked cockily as he took out a sword that was about 50 centimeters long. The blade had a red glow to it that drew the eye. It went by the name Blood Sword. This was because as it drank more and more of its enemy's blood, its attack power increased that much more. We will cross that bridge when we get there. Hey! You can't have all the fun. Park Jungba said. He was one of 2 hunters I had pegged as beggars in the beginning. This one had short hair and a fairly muscular body. The other one was pretty big too. Cuckoo. Don't worry. I'll kill just one. You 2 can figure out what to do with the other 2. Ah. Actually, why don't you give one of them to Youngchul? Song Han Sol asked as he looked back at the young master holding his bow. Me? I probably won't be able to shoot at it right. Hey. Kim Youngchul. We're here in this lame dungeon because of you. You need to at least get one monster or it'll be a waste. Okay. I'll try my best. Then, everyone get ready. Mr. Jung took out a short cane from within his clothes. It was about an arm's length with a green color at the end tip of one side. This sort of cane was for those who had magic abilities and used it for power amplification. Mr. Young started chanting and muttering incessantly under his breath as he held out his odd little cane, and the green end began to glow bigger until it enveloped the goblins. Blay? All three of them seemed to just lose it and began rolling around on the ground. Young master, you just need to kill the one with the red mark on its forehead. Mr. Young had pointed out the nearest goblin with his laser pointer. Duh. Any idiot knows how to do that without anyone having to ask him. Tap. 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 Song Hansol had closed the 20-meter distance to the goblin in just 3 steps and stabbed at his target's heart. Stab! Kuowak! The goblin victim suddenly came to again and began to scream out in pain. Even with the blood-curdling scream, the other 2 goblins were still rolling about in the green light. I guess Mr. Young's distraction magic was pretty strong. Slice! Song Hansol finished the goblin off by slicing at its throat and shutting off the sound. He was covered in a fountain of goblin blood as he headed back in our direction. Now, who's next? Okay. It's my turn. Wait for me, you bastard. As if just waiting for their turn, the 2 hunters ran out so suddenly that both me and Youngchul were almost knocked over. As they busied themselves killing the second goblin, it looked as if the young master was about to go and kill the third one. I was glad that he wasn't as timid as I first pegged him to be. I slowly walked up next to him and said a few words. This was all sales. Watch and learn. This is how you make tip money. Have you ever gone hunting before? Me? No. This is my first. And practice? A few times at home. And do you know the performance of the bow? Yes. Then there is nothing to worry too much about. It could never hurt a person, so all you have to do is point and shoot in the goblin's general direction. Like this? Kim Youngchul pulled on the bow as he looked at me for approval. Do not look at me. Look at your target, that goblin over there. Match your bow. A little more to the right. A little to the left. A little down. Yes. Right there. Relax your shoulders and breathe in deep. Hub. Now on the count of 3, 1, 2, now. Ping! The arrow flew from the bow. Keek. Nice shot. To think he really made his mark. I made a big deal of it by yelling hurrahs and clapping real loud. Kim Youngchul's eyes were round saucer plates as he stared at the mark where his arrow had hit the goblin. Oh, I got it. Congratulations on your first kill. Thank you. Ha ha. It is nothing. You can speak comfortably with me. How could I? You are much older than I am. It is usual for a hunter to speak comfortably or down to a porter. It is easier for me to hear as well. Is that so, sir? I mean, is that right? Translator note, this whole time, Youngchul was using honorifics when talking to the MC, which is highly unusual, and he just switched to regular speech. See. There you go. It suits you just fine. You can just speak like that from now on. Anyway, thanks. What's your name again? John Sangmin, sir. Please call on me if you ever have another need. I said as I passed him my business card. He took it and read it in all seriousness before placing it in his pocket. I could already tell that the probability of him calling me on his next raid would be fairly high. Kim Yonchul spoke. But I hit it in the shoulder. Is that all right? With that arrow, it's game over no matter where you hit your target. Do not worry. After I quelled his worries, I turned to look in the direction of the felled goblins. Song Hansol was looking on with scorn while the other two were still prancing around their goblin and brandishing their weapons. Die! Die, you bastard! Ah! Shit! Damn! Shit! Damn! Shit! Why won't it die? That's because you idiots have no skill. Retards. Song Hansol made a small smirk. Go to hell. It's because we have crappy weapons, okay? I guess I have to ask for a new weapon for my birthday. It's always the low-level ones who blame it on their weapons. Look! Our Yungchul was able to kill his target in one shot. Hey! Isn't that weapon expensive as hell though? But he did it from that distance. I bet you that you couldn't do the same thing if your life depended on it. I can too. Yeah, right. Clang! While the two were arguing, the goblin had pushed a sword into Park Jungbae's side. Luckily, it lazily bounced off his armor. Park Jungbae's face turned bright red. He was furious. This piece of crap. How dare you leave a streak on my armor? Do you know how much this costs? Can you just finish him off already so we can move on? Song Hansel's now blood-red sword finished sucking up the blood of its kill as he placed it back on his hip. I couldn't tell if he used a two-sword fighting style, but he had another sword on the opposite hip. The female porter hurried over with a handkerchief to clean the sweat off his brow. I guess she was used to doing this because she started cooing over him, telling him how brave and strong he was while making the biggest smile she could muster. Song Hansol laughed aloud as he raised his hand to cup her at the waist. The last goblin was finally slain, and as they waited for the monster to evaporate, everything appeared at once. What was left behind from the monsters was one monocyte. It was a poor hunt. To think that only one monocyte would appear from killing 3 goblins. It was usual for one monocyte to appear from killing 2 monsters, not 3. They had killed 30 monsters in total. It had taken them about 2 hours. This was a dungeon that didn't have any boss-level monsters, so as soon as you killed all the monsters in there, that was the end. The sun's rays began to filter into the cave and light it up. Their total items included 10 monocytes and 2 basnocytes. The total price of everything would come out to about $10,200. It seemed like there was a bit of bad luck on today's hunt, since if they split it all up, it barely amounted to $300 per person. Is this all? Mr. Young asked with his voice tinged with obvious disappointment. It was understandable. Even in a level 1 dungeon, for there to be such little items, this could be seen as a really bad day. Song Hansol glanced at his watch and said, It's only been about 2 hours, so let's rest a bit. There's no reason for us to hurry. You, Porter, why don't you take Yungchul and show him around a bit? I'm fine, Kim Yungchul said. We don't know when we'll come again, so make some memories. We were hunting this whole time, so I'm sure you didn't get to have a good look at the place, right? Is that right? Yeah. So just listen to what I'm saying. We'll wait over here. All right. Then. Kim Yungchul stared at me with wide, excited eyes. It seemed this kid was the type who couldn't refuse anyone. I nodded my head. I have things I need to carry, so it is hard for me to leave this place. You can just leave your things here. All of these items are my responsibility. If even one item disappears. This bastard. You're saying some mighty annoying things. What are you saying? Are you saying that if you leave your things here that someone's going to steal them? We're the only ones here, so you're pretty much saying we'll steal them, aren't you? Song Han-sol began screaming at the top of his lungs. That is not what I meant. I just meant in case. Then what? Shit. If something disappears, then I'll make sure I take the blame, so go. No. Sua. Why don't you hold on to everything? We have another porter here, so give it to her. You can give it to me. The girl porter came and stretched out an arm. I couldn't do anything but nod and hand it all over.